Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about the critical subject, texting while driving. So many people take that for granted. Most government has issued rules about it and reason why we shouldn't do it. But there's always this compulsion, the thing in our mind that always tells us that we need to respond now, we need to act now, we need to answer our phone when we hear that ding, when we hear the phone ringing. Sometimes we underestimate how challenging and how risky it is when you answer a phone and you look down for a second and you don't know the risk you're putting others at. Today, my guest will just be telling us exactly how that changed his life. I'm talking to Fletcher Cleaves. Fletcher is a motivational speaker, author, and a safe driver advocate. He was a normal guy like you and I. Had big dreams, had his whole life ahead of him. Into one fatal day, coming back from his practice, he was, drafted a hopeful football player in the US. He had his whole life changed around on one fatal day. He was driving, going back home with one of his friends in the car. And all of a sudden, the girl who was texting drove into him. And that changed his life forever. Fletcher is now paralyzed from the neck down. And he'll be sharing his story on how this painful day has changed his life and how he's out there to talk to others about the danger and why he is about driving and texting. Meet Fletcher. Welcome, everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in the introduction, today is a special one. I'm so delighted Fletcher here is coming to talk to us about issues about mobile phone, texting, and driving. I mean, you hear it all the time. I mean, this is one of the reasons I had to reach out to you because they tell us all the time, and we all know, everyone knows that we shouldn't be using mobile phone while we're driving. But
Absolutely.
occasionally, the thing happens in your mind where you think, "Oh, just 1 second, everything is safe," but you don't think of the consequences of your action. And I'm so glad you're here to join us, Fletcher. Where are you joining me here from?
I'm currently in Memphis, Tennessee, United States.
Wow, wow,
It
wow.
is it is noon here, so I know it's around evening time there, huh? Six
It is, it
p.m.
is. But I'm always delighted when I have to talk to people, anyone from the United States. It doesn't matter how
Hmm.
late I have to stay. I'm always delighted to speak to you guys.
Well, we
How are you
appreciate it.
doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Enjoying this MLK holiday. Off work today. Most businesses in the United States are closed today, so
Oh, it's a little bit
it's kind
quiet,
of a
right?
yeah,
Getting
it's a little
ready.
exactly.
Okay. For most of us out here, they might not know your story. I've done the intro, but nothing beats it coming from yourself. Fletcher, how would you describe yourself now? Who are you?
So I'm Fletcher Cleaves. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I played sports my entire life, and once I got to high school, I kind of focused more on football and tried to get a scholarship because my parents told me it was like, if you receive a scholarship and we don't have to pay for school, then we'll buy you a car. And at 16, you're like, new car, of course, yeah. So I worked my butt off, and I was blessed enough to receive a football scholarship to a school here in Tennessee. And trip training all May, June, July, August. I kind of getting my body ready for the upcoming football season. And unfortunately, one day leaving practice, we were on the way to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch a game. And on the way back to the dorm room, a lady was texting and driving and looking at her phone, and she crossed over the double yellow line. And just talking with my friend, seeing a car coming towards you, I just panicked and I overcorrected. And then once I overcorrected, the car spun out of control and we hit a guardrail. and we flipped into a ditch, and the car landed upside down. And once that happened, the roof caved in. And once the roof caved in, it broke my neck in two places. And so I was paralyzed immediately. My roommate was ejected from the car, and he managed to come back and like crawl, back to the car and kind of, hey Fletcher, you all right, man? And I was unconscious, and then once he kept calling my name, it woke me up. And he was like, I gotta go get some help, Fletcher. And then I started crying. I was 18, I was down there, and I was stuck, and I was just like, please don't leave me down here. Dang, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. He was like, man, I have to go get help. And so he climbed back up the hill to the street, and he was wandering around on the sidewalk, and somebody saw him, and he was bleeding. So they called 911, and they came and rescued me. And ever since then, it's been a crazy journey going from this big strong football player that relies so much on physical capabilities to now more than half of my body doesn't even work.
Mm.
So it was a hard journey. Definitely, it was eye opening, and it took a lot on my physical, of course, and it took a lot of my mental aspect of it to kind of pick myself up and tell myself that this is not the end of life. And went back to college. I graduated. I ended up getting a job and moving out, and started traveling and doing all the things you guys see today.
Fletcher, this is really, it's just mind blowing because I think your story is something that's, we're still getting into it, but just the little you've told us, really shocking because for example, I look at my son who's having all this hope to be an ice hockey star one day,
Mm-hmm.
and they're excited about it. And all of a sudden, all of that is taken away from you, and that whole effort and all that dream. But everything in life, what I love about you is that during this conversation, you're going to tell us how you've transformed your pain into, I won't necessarily say joy because there's still lots of pain along the way, but you found
Absolutely,
your own into purpose, I would say. Yeah, how you've
absolutely.
transformed your pain into purpose. Could you say when that happened, when the accident happened to you, what what was going through your mind at that time?
So at 18 years old, you really don't have a lot of responsibility. Well, I didn't at least. So so my three main at that age of my life was school, football, and girls. Those are the only three things that I had to work because I didn't have to. My parents were blessed enough to have saved money for my college tuition, so they kind of used some of that to kind of give me a couple of dollars here for gas and a couple of dollars here for just college stuff. Typical broke college student. And so when that happened, the first thing I thought about was I can't play. I've been playing football since I was 7 years old. Now, now what I'm gonna do. But luckily enough, every athlete has heard this saying that father time is undefeated, which means that your sport is gonna end one day, no matter if it's hockey, football, soccer, anything. It's gonna end one day for everybody. And the question is, what are you going to do after it's over? Football, if you just so happen to make a professional sport, that's still only a subset of your life. You might play what 10 years or and like for example, in American football, most people retire before the age of 30.
That's
And
young.
like
Yeah.
exactly right. So
That's
think about like
young.
you have 30 to your
What do
90
you
to
do?
and what are you gonna do?
Mm.
So with that being known, my parents enforced education inside of me. Like, okay, even though you want to play football and you want to be this star, it might not happen, but if it does happen, it's gonna be over sooner than later. So that I took my grades very seriously. I had a good education and a good background. So once that happened, the first thing I thought was, I can't play football. Then I went through that kind of pity stage of feeling sorry for myself or like, what am I gonna do with my life? And then I kind of just one day kind of just clicked, and I saw my friends out having fun, and I was like, I want to be, because Facebook was around then still in 2009, and I was watching them on Facebook starting their college careers and just having fun and joking around on campus, and I was like, hey, why can't I go back to school? Like I don't mind going to campus in my wheelchair,
Yes.
and so that kind of clicked, and I went to therapy. I was like, well, what do I need to do to go back to college? It was like, well, you gotta get your strength to be in your chair literally all day because you're gonna go to campus and you might not get back home until
Mm.
6, 7 p.m., right? And then you
Mm.
might want to go hang out after class, so you might not get home to 10, 11 p.m. So you have to be able to sit in your chair for multiple hours a day. So I just worked on that and then just go little goal by little goal and just keep what I gotta do next to do this, what I gotta do next to start driving, what I gotta do next to do this. And like I said, I ended up graduating and I'm going back to college, and I had so much fun.
But when it happened, the recovery process, was it very, recovery is always difficult. For example, you see, we're
Mhm.
going through a pandemic, and that recovery and that even getting through this pandemic is
Mhm.
hurting the world. When you were going through your recovery process, how was that? Was it a thing where you just had to say to yourself, look, I'm tired of being here. I just need to get better. How did you decide to say to yourself, I'm not going to be here for the rest of my life. I have to do something and get better and also still be fit because you still look
Mhm.
fit. You look like an athlete, even though you're in a wheelchair, but you still look
Mhm.
fit. So what
Yeah.
what did you do differently?
So just thinking, having, like I said, I played sports my whole life. You always had that mindset of like kind of working out. So when I got to therapy, there was like, today we're gonna lift weights. I was like, perfect. I've been doing that my whole life. That's what I want to do. But
Uh-huh.
then the harder part was the occupational therapy, like the life therapy, like getting yourself dressed and brushing your teeth, because that was the more frustrating part. Because it's like, today we're gonna work on brushing your teeth, and I'm like, I've been brushing my teeth since my whole life. What do you mean? And you're like, well, now you're paralyzed, and you don't have the dexterity that you used to have in your hands. So you're gonna have to learn how to brush your teeth and put your clothes back on and get yourself dressed. And that was the more so frustrating part, because it was like, I'm 18 years old, 19, and I have to ask someone to help me put my pants on or help me put my underwear on, and it was just weird. I have to ask a nurse has to come help me take a shower. That was the more mental uh, part of it. But one of the things that kind of made me pick myself up was I saw how much my parents and my family had sacrificed for me to be where I was, in therapy, or how much they wanted me to like get back and it's gonna be okay, Fletcher. It's gonna be okay, Fletcher. Because both of my parents ended up losing their jobs when this happened.
Mm,
In 2009, my dad lost his job first, and then so he came to Atlanta with me and stayed the entire. Well, they both came at first. They both came at first when it happened,
mm,
and then after like a month or so, my mom had to go back to work. And so she would like fly to Memphis and work for a week, come to Atlanta, work from home a week, then fly back to Memphis. She did that for like 4 months, and then something happened and they ended up just letting her go. So now it's like, I'm like, man, I'm in the hospital. Both my parents are out of a job. They're here with me, sacrificing so much things, and trying to
mm.
make sure that I'm better. So the least I can do is just push myself to the best of my abilities so that the things that they have sacrificed won't be for nothing. So
That's
that was
true.
my realm. That's what pushed me so hard, was my support system.
What about adapting back into the real world? How did you come back when it was finally time to go back home? How did you adapt into the real world again?
It was hard because where I was for a year doing therapy, it
Mm,
was one of the top rehabilitation centers for spinal cord injuries in the United States. So that place was equipped for everything. Like light switches were lower, tables were perfect size. Like it wasn't hard at all when I got to therapy, when I was in therapy. But when you get to the real world, everything's not so accessible. So
yes,
that was probably the hardest part, like going being on college campus and going down the sidewalk and all of a sudden there's no curb cut. So it's
yes.
like, how am I supposed to get down? And you have to like go back around and go back the way you came and find a curb cut. It's just stuff like that was frustrating, and like it's raining and it's kind of hard to push your chair while it's raining, or anything like that. You might have overslept and you can't just run and jump through the grass and run across campus. You have to follow the trail and go up the hill, and is that was the more frustrating part, not being able to get myself ready or do the things as quickly as I used to. Because at a young age, 18, 19, like I said, when I got hurt,
Mm,
if class started at 10:30, I'd literally wake up at like 10:15, get dressed, wash my face, brush my teeth, and just throw on
yeah.
some basketball shorts and go to grab my backpack and go to class. But with being in a wheelchair, class at 10:30, you might have to wake up at 7 a.m. and do that 2 hour routine first, and kind of put an extra time in there for any mishaps that may happen. So that was probably the hardest part, and just picking myself up and getting back into the real world. It wasn't. I feel like I didn't have a choice because, like I said, my parents had sacrificed so much, and my friends were there to support me, as you saw in the video, throwing me off cliffs and stuff. Like they've always been there to support me. So like I said, I didn't have a choice because I wasn't gonna let them feel sorry for me, or or let their hard work and sacrifice go to waste.
Before I get into the acts and the what you do now, what you're really doing to help others, I really want to talk about people, because people. I always say to people, the real your friends and family are always nice. They will accept you and they will push you.
Hmm.
But our biggest challenge are people. People
Hmm.
just see you and always have a stereotype to people with like any kind of disability. It could be invisible, it could be physical disability.
Hmm.
How did you take that challenge of people?
So like I said, luckily, I didn't have a mental disability, so I still thought my thought process was still the same as always. I still my personality was still the same. It's just like my friend said, Fletcher's the same. He's just sitting down all the time, you know. So it was kind of hard or frustrating at times because, like you said, society doesn't necessarily understand certain disabilities, so they might treat you a little differently until you speak up for yourself.
Yes.
And so, like, one of the most frustrating things that has happened and still sort of kind of happens is like, let's say me and my mom or one of my friends, we go out to the grocery store or we go to the mall or something, right? And we'll go in the store and the clerk or the assistant, they'll look at whoever I'm with and they'll like, does he need any help? And my mom's like, I don't know, ask him. Like I can't. They just assume that because I'm in a wheelchair that I can't speak properly or something. I have a mental disability. I'm like, you know, like like we go to a restaurant. My mom will order because I let the young ladies order first or whoever I'm with,
Mm.
and they'll look at her and they'll be like, is he gonna have anything to eat today? I'm like, what? I can speak for myself. And so those are the things, I don't hold it against people. It's just that, like you said, the stereotypes that society has been told of what disability looks like or what disability is crazy.
Yeah, no, I know with my sickle cell anemia, mine
Hmm.
is invisible, so you can't really tell. So
Hmm.
mine, I remember when I used to have a disabled bed because I was always very sick. And
Hmm.
I remember people would come up to me and say, "Why do you have a disabled bed? You should not." And they would shout at me. I'm thinking,
Hmm.
oh gosh, I was like, not today. Today is the worst
Yeah,
day of my pain. You shouldn't do this to me today.
not today.
And you just have to say, you know what, you can't get everyone to read inside you or inside your mind, and you just have to
Hmm.
accept it and not take it too personal. Because I remember when I took it too personal, I then started getting upset about life, and it was just not worth it. You just
Yeah, that's why a lot of things rarely make me upset because
mm,
what I've been through, and seeing other people in the hospital that were kind of worse than I was.
mm,
Yeah, so it's like getting upset because the Kroger or the Walmart or whatever is out of milk or something so minute is like, or somebody cut you off in traffic. I'm like, go ahead, man. It's not that
mm.
serious.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
why
like
worry
because
about it? Why do
exactly,
you let that spoil your whole day?
exactly.
Fletcher, you are now doing an amazing thing. It's like this happened, and rather than you stop there, because I've talked to some individuals and they felt pity for
Hmm.
themselves. You are now an advocate for people using their phones and driving. You are an advocate to help educate people, not just the young ones, but the adults as well. How did that journey start?
So the journey started. I was speaking to one of my first speeches I gave. There was like it was a football game, a high school football game here in Memphis, and one of the friends was like, "Hey, you play football, right? Do you mind kind of give my guys a pep talk before the game and kind of get them, ready?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So I gave them a talk, and then somebody that was there was like, "Man, that was really good. Do you mind come talking to my football team?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then I talked, and then somebody from there was like, "Do you mind come talking to my entire 12th grade class?" I'm like, sure. And long story short, and the snowball kept going. Then I was talking to an entire high school, right, like 9th through 12th grade, and I was giving the no texting and driving speech and things and statistics and things of that nature. And AT&T just so happened to be, and a representative of AT&T just so happened to be in the crowd. And he was like, "Man, this is fantastic. This is phenomenal. We love to partner with you and some businesses and whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool." At the time, I'm not really, because people talk a good game, so it's like, "Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, here's my number, here's my contact information." And like a year later, he reached out and was like, "Hey, we're gonna do a commercial with you." I'm like, "What? Really?" And so they did a commercial with ESPN, and after that happened and it aired nationwide, people started contacting me, and my speeches started taking off. And but like you said, it's not only for children; it's
Mm,
also for adults because teenagers and children, or not children, but teenagers and young adults have been texting longer than they've been driving. So they're like, oh, I've been texting since I was in the fourth grade. Like I know how to text without driving or text without looking. And then adults, the elder adults, they've been driving longer than they've been texting. So they was like, well, Texas just came out 15 years ago. I've been driving for 30 years. I know what I'm doing, you
mm.
know? And it's like, okay, well, and the truth is that it is scientifically proven that the human brain cannot do two cognitive skills at the same time effectively. Like one of those things will suffer. So even though you think you're driving, or you think you're texting perfect, you're misspelling words. So boom, texting is suffering. Or if you're focused on texting and you kind of swerve a little bit or you hit the curb, like well now driving is being affected. So I just tell people, just to focus on the task at hand. If something goes wrong with either one of those tasks, what's worse, you misspelling a word or you causing an accident? So
Mm,
focus on driving, but while you're behind the wheel. When I first started driving when I was 16, my dad told me, son, a car is not a toy. A car is a 3,000 pound machine. So you need to be paying attention while you're driving. You need to be
mm.
messing with the radio. You need to be playing with your friends. You need to be paying attention. So that's why I always try to express to people.
I love your quote. You always say, smart man knows his limit, a wise man knows none.
Exactly.
Since
Yeah.
this happened, you've not stopped. You've just really helping so many people, and you are changing, the way people look at things. Like, I'm sure when even my young son watches this, he would, when he decides to start driving one day, he will think about it and say, is
Mhm.
this what I really should be doing? How
It,
would,
it's hard. It's hard. It's definitely
yeah.
hard because we are such a technology based society, like email, phones,
Mm,
iPads, Apple Watches, and everything, right? So it's so easy to be connected to so many different forms of distractions.
mm,
And I've been part of different studies, and they were saying in this one study that a cell phone is innately the world's smallest slot machine because when you get a notification, especially in the younger generations where they've been texting since that's all they know is texting, right?
mm,
Like you'll be in the bed or like you'll be in the kitchen and your phone will kind of buzz in the living room and you see it and you're like, hold on, I gotta go get that, I gotta go get it, I gotta go get it.
mm, mm.
Like you're releasing they're saying like your brain releases like endorphins to
It's very
like
addictive.
it's addictive. It's
Yeah.
addicting. People have been going to rehab because they can't stay off their phones, and so they're driving and like it'll go off like a bing, and you'll look, like, oh, that might be my daughter, that might be my boss. Let me just look at it real quick.
So the reaction you get when you go into a room and you start talking and you tell them your story, what's the reaction, especially with the older crowd? What do they normally tell you when you start talking?
The older crowd, they typically say, "I have a son your age," or "I have a niece that's your age," or something like that, and or "I have a son that's just started driving. He got his driver's license 2 weeks ago. I would love for him to hear your story and let him know the seriousness of driving a car." And then they get the tears and the because I was an athlete and I didn't let this defeat me, so to speak. And it's very refreshing to know or to see a crowd and look out when you're on stage and you look out, over 500 people or 1,000 people, and you kind of glance and you see somebody patting their eyes, or you see somebody like this with their mouth open. It's like this is what I'm really changing the world. I love it.
Oh no, you are doing an amazing thing. And honestly, my final question is that now that you've started this journey and you're really on a roll, which I think you should not just stop in the United States, you should really take this on
Hmm.
a global level because it's not
Hmm.
just United States that has this problem. We have it here in the United Kingdom, we have it in Europe, we have it around the world. Everyone,
Hmm.
all the young people and adults as well, always think, oh, just one answer. What's the big deal? You always say, where there's a will, there's a way. And
Yep. Where
that's your
there's a
tagline.
will, yeah, that's my tagline. Where there's a
Yeah.
will, WHEEL, there's
Yes.
a way.
Yes.
Because I might be in a wheelchair, but I'm gonna find a way to get whatever I need to get done. If I have a goal, I have accomplishment that I want to achieve, I might not be able to do it as quickly as you can, but I will have a plan on what I need to do to make sure I accomplish that goal. And like you said, and also this is a global, thing. When I've been to Rome and I was in London,
Mm,
and just being over there for the first time, across the pond, and you're like, this is not, and you're just looking at taxis and cars, and you're like, man, this is not just a United States problem. It's people like literally driving or like looking down or one phone in their hand doing this, and I'm like, wow, man, I would love to just share my story and get the seriousness to let everybody know what's going on. Unfortunately, I haven't got the opportunity to give an international speech yet. All the international travels I've done have been leisure, like just having fun.
mm.
But I would love to make
I'm sure
Canada,
that's fine.
London, yeah, just to share it everywhere because, like I said, when I travel for fun, I realized like this is not just a stage problem;
No.
it's a real
Yeah.
problem because people have been killed just because somebody was checking an email.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention, run a red light because you were checking your phone, and I've been fortunate enough to meet other speakers that are in the distracted driving, texting world, and two guys I know have been to jail because they were texting and driving and end up killing two people,
Mm,
not paying attention, trying to texting and telling his boss that, hey, I'll be late for work. And 18 wheeler stopped in front of him. He didn't see it. And the 18 wheeler crashed and ended up killing a elderly man. And he said that's something he had to do prison time for that.
mm.
But it's crazy. It's like
It's,
having to never gone to jail or never have a track record. All of a sudden, you're like, I'm in jail right now. I killed somebody because I chose to answer my text messages versus pay attention on the road.
Fletcher, my final question is that
Hmm.
one of the things that happened to you was a big life-changing event that took place in your life.
Hmm.
It takes courage to be able to find that joy in yourself to keep living. Most people, this happens to them and they just think, I can't do it. I just can't live on. I can't go on. I just want to lock myself. How did you find that joy, and what would be your message to others in finding your joy and also forgiveness for the other person who caused this problem on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I never met the lady
Mm,
that caused the accident. So I try not to. Anger was like the first week or two, but then it wasn't bringing any benefit to my life. So I'm like, and you can't cry over spilled milk, right? So,
mm,
you just got to pick yourself up and just keep going. Like, what are you gonna do now? My football coach always told us, the man or like the person that says they can and the person that says they can't are both right. Which one will you be?
mm,
So I always wanted to take that and be like, I'm the person that says they can. I never say I can't. I might say not right now or like I can't at the moment. Like people say, can you walk? I never say no. I'd be like, Not at the moment, I can't." you know um because you get all type of crazy questions speaking to kids in high schools, right?
mm,
But yeah, so just my support system and like my friends, like you said in the video, like so they didn't when it first started, I kind of was down on myself, but they never let me like, all right, Fletch, come on, let's get up and go to this party, or let's get up and do this. And I was like, you know what? Okay, let's do it. And then I became infectious and I was like, okay, guys, let's go and let's do this. And especially like I said, all the things my parents sacrificed for me, I couldn't give up. And just me being hard headed and kind of crazy, I was like, hey, uh, you think I can jump off that building? Yep. Y'all want to help me? Sure.
yeah.
Why not? It's just life doesn't have to be over just because tragedy has happened or when adversity has come. I tell like crappy stuff happens to everybody. If you ask any adult or anybody, something crappy has happened to everybody. But it's not what happens to you that
Yeah.
defines you. It's how you respond to it. How are you gonna respond when you lose your job? How are you gonna respond when a divorce or hardship happens in your life? Or like with your disability, when you're not feeling good or you have to go to some type of therapy, like how are you going to respond when something bad happens in your life? Because something that is going to happen to you,
Mm,
whether it's now, 10 years from now, something's adverse is going to happen. And how are you going to respond to it? Are you going to feel sorry for yourself? Are you going to lay down? Or are you going to face this obstacle head on and just keep living life? I realized that, in a lot of car accidents, there's some people that don't make it. Some people
mm.
aren't fortunate enough as I was to survive. And I take my survival as a second chance to live life and inspire others to do the same.
Wow. Fletcher, that's amazing. I'm really touched by your story.
Well,
And
thank
I'm
you.
also touched by how you've turned pain into some purpose, which a lot of people cannot.
Lemons out of lemonade, right? Or lemonade out of lemons.
Yes, yes, you have done that. I'm really grateful for your time today. Thank you
Not a
so
problem. I
much for taking
appreciate
the
you.
time to speak to me today. And I wish you all the best with all you do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.